All right, in this exercise, I'm going to show you that strange trick, which can be very useful, sometimes absolutely necessary, where you can move an object in a perpendicular direction by pressing and holding the 5 key of all keys. And the only way I can defend this operation is that it was going to be the tilde key, but the tilde key doesn't exist on a lot of European keyboards, so they went with 5 instead. And the reason is that 1, 2, 3, and 4 were taken up switching between panes and between no pane, of course, no perspective whatsoever. And then the 5 key comes next in the sequence. But how in the world does it work? Well, in order to show you what's up here, I've created another document. And this time we're going to build this step object in perspective. So I'm going to switch over to the layers panel and meatball the perspective layer, just so that we can use it as a kind of tracing template. And I'm going to reduce the opacity value to 35%. And then I'm going to go ahead and lock down this layer so we don't end up modifying it. Now, you should see the perspective grid on screen. I've already created that in advance for you. If you're not seeing the perspective grid, then just go ahead and switch to the perspective grid tool and it'll pop up on screen. Then turn on that core objects layer and you will see the side view, the side elevation of this object. You'll also see one of the steps from the top view and one of the steps from the front view as well. And these steps are set up exactly the way that they need to be, as you'll see in a moment. All right, so if you've got your little widget up on screen, make sure that the left grid is active. I've also got my smart guides working. So if you don't, press Control-U or Command-U on a Mac to turn them on. And then go ahead and grab that side view right there. And I'm trying to select it. However, I've got the wrong tool selected. That's my problem. So I'll go ahead and switch from the perspective grid tool to the perspective selection tool. And then I'll click on that side elevation and I'll drag it. It's important that your bounding box is not visible at this point. So go ahead and drag it by the bottom right corner so that you snap into alignment, or at least align with that intersection of the panes down there at the bottom of the grid. Next, I want you to press Control-Shift-B, and we're going to be switching back and forth a lot, by the way, in order to pull this effect off, because it's a combination of tedium and automation, as you're about to see. So press Control-Shift-B or Command-Shift-B in order to turn on the bounding box, and then I'm going to drag the upper left corner like so in order to scale the elevation like this. That's about right. And next, I want you to go ahead and grab the front view of this orange step here. And I'm going to go ahead and drag it by its bottom left corner. But if I do that now, of course, I'll scale the shape. So I'll press Control-Shift-B again, or Command-Shift-B once again, in order to turn off the bounding box. And then I'll go ahead and drag the shape down. It's aligning to the left-hand grid. That's not what I want. So I'll press the 3 key to align it to the right grid and drag it into position. And it would be nice if it were snapping into alignment, but it doesn't seem to be doing that for me. So I'll just have to eyeball it here and try to get it as exact as possible. And I might want to go ahead and zoom in as well so I can see what I'm doing. Now press Control-Shift-B again, or Command-Shift-B, in order to bring back the bounding box and go ahead and scale that shape up and to the right like so, so that it matches essentially the template in the background. Okay, here's the amazing thing. We're going to go ahead and grab this top view. And it doesn't really make sense that it's coming in as a vertical element. But as soon as you press the 2 key in order to switch to the ground level, it goes ahead and amazingly snaps to the grid, exactly as it should. So those of you who are familiar with creating these kinds of elevations, the perspective grid is set up to work along with you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and drag this bottom right corner because I still have my bounding box turned on in order to scale that step. And then I'll drag up and to the right in order to scale outward like so that I'm more or less once again matching the scene, and I'm trying to get it exactly right. And the reason it's so important to get the alignment on as much as you can, to the degree that you can, is that every little weirdness, every little non-alignment is going to be accentuated as we continue to work. All right, so that looks like a pretty good match to me. Now, what I'd love to do, wouldn't this be great, is to grab both the top view and the side view here and replicate them over and over again. Problem is, when you're working in perspective, you can only select objects on one pane at a time, which I don't understand at all. I don't know why that's an issue, but we're going to have to replicate these steps independently, the fronts and the top views of the steps, that is. All right, so having selected this front view, I'm going to go ahead and press Control-Shift-B or Command-Shift-B on the Mac in order to turn off my bounding box. And I'm going to drag this corner right there. And what I'd like to do is just drag it up to this location, but it doesn't scale properly. Now, I have no idea why this is. Why is that it doesn't scale properly? It seems like it would automatically, but it doesn't. So I'll go ahead and undo that maneuver there. What you have to do is move this object in a perpendicular direction. And you do that, I'll go ahead and drag the top corner, although I think that's going to go ahead and select the top step. So I'm going to move this orange object to the top of the stack by pressing Control-Shift left bracket or Command-Shift left bracket on the Mac. And I apologize that I'm just using keyboard shortcuts here, but this is when you need keyboard shortcuts, is when you're having to tediously manipulate a bunch of objects one after another. So I'll go ahead and drag this top left point, and I'm going to drag it back to this location there, and I'm going to press and hold the 5 key as I'm working. And notice now it scales exactly into place. I still have the 5 key down. I'm going to add the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac in order to go ahead and clone that shape as well. And now I'll go ahead and drag it up to the desired location, and I think that's a match, although I'm not sure if we have things dead on right there. We may have a little bit of misalignment, but it looks pretty good. All right, so I'll go ahead and zoom out some more, and then I'll drag this guy, and I got to do the exact same thing. So let's go ahead and move him to the top of the stack by pressing Control-Shift right bracket or Command-Shift right bracket on the Mac. And this time, and this is where it gets kind of confusing, you don't drag this step shape over to the left, you're going to drag it upward. So go ahead and drag by the far left point if you're working along with me, and drag it up like so. Notice that it's not scaling properly at all until you press and hold the 5 key, and then it does. And with the 5 key down, go ahead and add Alt or Option on a Mac, and then release, and you end up getting this step there, and now you need to drag it into the proper position, which should be right about there, I figure. All right, so the good news is we've got 2 steps down. The bad news is we still have 2 steps to go, and we have this rear step thing as well. And we're going to create that, and you'll see that we have a higher degree of automation now that we have multiple shapes on the same pane. We can go ahead and duplicate those shapes in pairs, which will save us some time in the next exercise.